Let's begin with your stay in India. You've been very busy, and it's been a very good year for WPP in India. Your
So far, we've still got 3 months to go.
Yeah, but your domination is so big. Why do you still need to come to India? I know you like the
It's nice.
food.
It's good fun.
It's
I like
good.
the food. It's good fun. I like mango chutney.
Yeah.
And it's good fun. No, our people are really good. We have 15,000 people here. They're very good. Some of them go outside India, and we export the talent. But it's, people are enthusiastic. They're committed. I mean, you could have asked the same question of David Ogilvy. David never liked to fly, so he used to get on a boat and come to the AGM, I think, of Ogilvy here in India every year. I think it was partly because they translated his book into so many different languages and dialects here that he loved that, and he would have a rapt audience, quite rightly, for what he had to say. But no, I'd love our business. I've said this before. Whenever I come to India, and I'll say it again, if our business outside India was as good as India, I wouldn't have to work. I could retire, which would make a lot of people happy.
So I think ultimately we are all in the business of making people happy.
Yes.
So when
absolutely.
is that going to happen?
When is what going to happen? I'm happy or I
world
retire.
Domination.
World domination?
Yes. I mean, already one way to ask that question is, the WPP revenue in India is just under 600 million.
Yeah.
And in China, it's about 1.6 billion.
Yes.
So when do you see in India we'll be close to that?
Well, it's going to be very difficult for India, whatever the growth rate is, to catch up with China. But just sort of step back for a minute. So China is 10 trillion. India is 2.5 trillion. UK is 3 trillion, 3.5 trillion. So the difference actually between UK and India is not that enormous, which is a lesson for us. But China is, let's call it, 3 or 4 times bigger. India is under-branded. I say this every time I come here. It's had zero effect. Maybe it's having a little bit of effect, but
what the PM is doing.
Yes, the PM is very good. I mean, he clearly demonstrates with Make in India, with Startup India, with Digital India, Stand Up, whatever. One thing I would just say is there's a danger of too much fragmentation. The Great Britain campaign, the Great Campaign, is a great campaign because it unifies government communication. And I think the other thing is, I was discussing with Piyush and others, it would be nice to have a Create in India campaign. I mean, I understand the reason for Make in India, which is India is seen as the service hub of the world. China was seen as the manufacturing hub. But a Create in India or Created in India campaign, because there is a lot of brain power and there's a lot of creativity in the widest sense of the words. And, India does well at Cannes, for example, the Clios and all these things. You have Bollywood. You have a vibrant film and entertainment industry. You have a vibrant sports industry, although the T20 cricket side is not doing as well as perhaps it might, but we'll see what happens later on. I had to get that one in. I will not mention rugby in that context. But in any event, I just think...
it dovetails well with the fact that 2/3 of our GDP is also in services.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I think created is also important to underestimate. I know the reasoning behind the Make in India, and it's been very successful, and I think the work is very good, and we've made a contribution to it too, and would like to contribute it even further.
So good. You talk of technology, and you can't talk of technology without not talking of WhatsApp. The old saying was, the family that prays together stays together. The new saying is, the family that's on WhatsApp together stays together. Are you on WhatsApp with your leading CEOs and managers in your WPP organization?
What do you mean?
WhatsApp. I mean, are you on
Yes. Do I use WhatsApp with them?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I rely... WhatsApp is for my wife.
Right.
She's an incessant WhatsApper. I've also sort of logged on to Hike as well, whilst I've been here. But no, I don't. I use email. And they probably get enough email. If I was on WhatsApp, it would be 10 times worse, worse than that. So, but, you know, it's a bit like the sort of discussion of too many campaigns. You know, there are too many applications, and I think you choose one. I mean, if there's a major technological change as a result, you migrate, but no.
You're not yet on WhatsApp.
No.
A lot of people are relieved. You know, you met our PM in New York recently. And let me ask you this question. You know, both of you lead by example, right? Both of you.
I'm very flattered you compare me to, but...
No, I genuinely mean it.
I think the analogy is...
You've delivered. Our PM will deliver. You've delivered.
You should be in advertising.
Yeah. So I was. You met our PM in New York. And is there a Modi in Sir Martin? Or let me ask you, is there a Sir Martin in PM Modi?
No, I don't think so. You can't make that comparison. I mean, I think the only comparison that I think would be fair, but he's operating at 50,000 feet, and I'm operating in the foothills, is, and I think this is important. So you have to have a clear strategy, I think, to have any chance of success. It has to be simple. It can be wrong, by the way, but you have to have a clear strategy. So I can tell you what our strategy is in one sentence. You know, fast growth markets, digital, data, and horizontality. That's it, finished. Okay? Now, it may be wrong,
No,
but
it works so far.
It can be communicable, right? Easily. Having said that, it's difficult to get the other side of it, which is implementation. And you remember that there was a fight amongst business school professors. What was more important, strategy or implementation?
Execution.
Execution. And, you know, there's more. There's strategy, structure, and I include in structure execution, implementation, and bench strength, right? Because structure covers bench strength. And the Prime Minister, I would say that that's the similarity. So we have a clear strategy. We have, for good or bad, we focus on the implementation. It's very difficult to implement. I think on our if I was going to sort of self-check us, I think we've done well on the fast growth markets. I think we've done well on the digital. I think we've done well on the data. Where I still think we've got a lot of room for improvement is on the horizontality thing. Getting the full benefit out of that 190,000 people in one way or another in 112 countries should be the key mission. If we should turn the other thing upside down and start off with horizontality, because, and this is something for all companies, right? This is for our clients, media owners. I mean, media owners tend to be very siloed. Right? In fact, a Google and a Facebook, in the way they deal with us, I think, in a more effective way than the traditional media owners. I mean, we sit down and plan our business with Google and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat in a much more sophisticated way, interestingly, than with the traditional media owners. And we have an annual plan, we plan it out, we set objectives, and we look as to where we're going right or wrong. And that might be because somebody is looking at the situation with fresh eyes. So it's about strategy. So I'm flattered by the comparison, but I think the comparison is wrong. But the only area where it might be right,
you delivered.
It's strategy, implementation, bench strength. And with Prime Minister Modi, the strategy is there. The expectations are very high. What I hear from people here is people say, can it be done? And, is there the sufficient talent and bench strength to get it done? To be fair, I think he's doing the right thing, because if you look back, my favorite parallel would be JFK, who, in order to get America going, said, let's have a big hairy goal, get a man on the moon. And everybody looked at him and said, the guy's over-ambitious. And yet it was achieved. So I think if you set that ambitious goal and you deliver and you organize yourself in it, and I have little or no doubt that he'll be successful.
You started your entrepreneurial journey 38 plus years ago, right?
30 years ago.
30 years ago.
30
right?
years ago. I'm not that old.
Yes, I know.
I'm pretty old, but not that old.
Now, if you were to start that today, what would some things you would do differently? And something you do exactly like you did 30 years back?
Well, we had a session at Davos, I remember, with John Wren and Maurice Levy and I think Michael Roth as well. And the four of us were asked that question. And I always remember I answered by saying I'd probably be private. I would start in the content and media area and technology. So technology, data, and content would sort of dominate. But, you know, I mean, just that's
you back that up by making investments in content. Out of all the holding companies, WPP has more investments in content.
Yeah. Well, we believe that, you know, we fundamentally believe that clients choose agencies on the basis of talent. We think we have the best talent, particularly here in India, but it may be occasionally that some of our competitors have some good talent. Just occasionally. Right?
Sam is referring to you.
Omnicom.
Sam.
No, Sam has talent. Omnicom, rarely, but occasionally. Publicis, maybe even more rarely. Havas, Dentsu, yes, occasionally. IPG, even IPG. But in order to differentiate, you know, if you've seen presentations, I could only take 3 presentations. My mind couldn't absorb more than 3 presentations. So when 10 agencies make a presentation, I'm not sure how people evaluate them because, you know, after 3 it morphs into 1, and I can't remember which one was which. So what you have to do, I think, is to differentiate on an additional basis. They don't substitute, they complement. Technology, so Xaxis and AppNexus, because we've got to have an agnostic platform,
sure,
you know, against DoubleClick and Atlas. Data, so ComScore and RenTrack, you know, as a different measurement approach, as an example, in addition to Kantar, and then content. So we invest in Vice. You know, people laughed at Shane Smith. You know, young people are not interested in news. Nonsense. Young people are just as interested in news as we are supposed to be. They just like the style done differently and the approach different.
Absolutely.
So you get this sort of arrogant, snooty approach from, I won't name the organizations, who say these journalists, what do they know? They're youngsters and they've got... The fact is they are. You know, they may have less experience, but they have a different way of doing things which is more contemporary.
And very, very narrative and storytelling.
Exactly. And Media Rights Capital, you know, which produces House of Cards for Netflix, or Full Screen, 100 YouTube channels with Peter Chernin and AT&T, where we're developing content. Snapchat with Truffle Pig, you know, so we're doing Refinery 29 with content for female millennials. Yeah. So all of these things, I think, are vital, and you have to experiment. And the final thing is, you know, our objective is to get our traditional businesses, you know, the 150-year-old J. Walter Thompson, you know, despite my attempts to destroy the company, they've managed to survive. And to get them to move faster, we're along with Ogilvy and Y&R and Gray, which are the sort of core brands, to get our digital businesses, like a Wonderman or an Ogilvy One or a Possible or an AKQA or a VML, to move faster, even faster, and they're doing a good job at move faster. And last but not least, you know, where we see our business being cannibalized, we may even have to eat our own children before anybody else does, because they will come along and they will cannibalize disintermediate, disrupt our business. What we have to do is to move faster. So experimentation, we shouldn't be frightened of experimentation.
Fantastic. On that count, I want to ask you the last question. Is there a Donald Trump in the agency business?
Is there a what?
A Donald Trump in the agency business? If there is one, who would that be?
Is there
a Donald Trump in the agency business?
Oh, is there a Donald Trump in the... Oh boy, you're giving me a big opportunity here. But I will resist it. Is there a Donald Trump?
You're very expressive.
I'm sorely tempted, but I think on the grounds of decency, I will decline to answer that question.
Thank you for being a great sport. So we'll take 3 questions. And if you...
It's a very good question. Is there a Donald Trump in the business? It's really good. It's a really
I was
good
expecting an answer.
Who was the bright spark who came up with that one? You? Yes.
Anyway, So we'll take 3 questions, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. Tell us who you are, and
Don't be shy.
if you want a job,
Don't
then
be-
you know his email.
Don't be shy. Come on.
Can we get the mics around?
Otherwise, we'll do some cold calling. We can.
Sam, any question? No question.
Is there a Donald Trump in the room?
There is a hand there.
Ah, good.
Yes.
Here we go.
Can we get the mic to the gentleman? Quickly. Crisp question. Very crisp question.
Do you think...
Who? Please
okay.
give us your name and...
Hi, this
your,
is Rajiv Dhingra. I am the founder and CEO of What Consult. Do you think disruption like Airbnb, what Airbnb did to travel, or let's say hotels and staying at different places, can happen to advertising? Do you think something like that, where a platform is created to help both marketers and advertising agencies interact? Do you think that's a possibility in the future?
Well, I think the honest answer is it's probably already happened. You have crowdsourced platforms. In fact, one guy who left, it was quite a funny story. So we had a guy, I won't name him. You could probably put him in the Donald Trump category. He left one of the big agency holding companies, having run it, and started a sort of fund. And he bought one of the crowdfunding agencies. And immediately he bit the hand that fed him, because he immediately came out and said, the agency model is dead. Yeah. What I've been working on and had put him in the style to which he'd been accustomed is dead. And the crowd-funded platform, or the crowd-sourced platform, is the future. So I think, you look at examples like that. You look at, if you asked me to describe who our competition is, it is the people that I've mentioned or joke about, and they joke about us too. It is about some of the consulting and software companies, so it is about a Deloitte, about an Accenture, about an Oracle, a Salesforce.com, companies like that. It is, Google and Facebook are frenemies. So all of these companies, so there are different levels, and then there are, because in the data industry, there's Nielsen and Ipsos and GfK. So we have competitors of different, and they are, some of them are frenemies, some of them are not, some of them are enemies, pure enemies, as opposed to being people that we do. Google, our biggest media relationship is with Google at around 3 billion last year, 3.6 billion this year. So, and yet, they compete with us in various ways. So the answer to your question is the industry subject to the disruption of Uber or an Airbnb? Sure it is. And, you take production. Take Hogarth, which is our platform, our digital asset platform. So instead of people pulling down assets, print assets, production assets, willy-nilly in 60, 80, 100 countries or whatever it is where clients are, we have one digital, so you pull down one digital platform, you pull down the asset that you need at any particular point in time. So our business is continuously being attacked, disintermediated, disrupted, so much so that if you look at it, what's really interesting is if you look at the financial performance of WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, IPG, Havas, Dentsu, Aegis, and you take them as a group, and you look at how the stock market values, all of them are listed, and you look at how the stock market values them, and you compare them to our clients, particularly, let's say, the FMCG companies, those agency groups always have sold at a discount. And analysts increasingly ask, even though the performance of those companies is superior often, or at least the same, in terms of earnings per share growth and dividends and all the other metrics they use. And the question that's asked is, why is that the case? Well, inherently, the business is seen as being more cyclical. which is not, when you look at the numbers, is not justified by the discount at which the group sells. But the reason that it happens is we're perceived as being more volatile. We're perceived as being more based on personal relationships and personalities. Let's call it the Trump phenomenon, right? We'll christen that the Trump phenomenon. And the industry is seen to be more vulnerable to technological disruption, which is your question. Now, 4 or 5 years ago or 6 years ago, analysts would ask me the G question, Google's going to kill you. Well, we're still here. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that, by the way, we're not going to get killed in 5 years' time. But we've managed to shift ourselves geographically and technologically, which are the two buckets that really are important, to take care of that, at least for the time being. Google is 360 billion as a market cap. We're 28 billion. Omnicom's 17 billion. That's the second factor. We're tiddlers in comparison, pygmies, in comparison to the giants that we have to. There may be an advantage of that, the motor torpedo boat versus the aircraft carrier, but it's still difficult. So that technological risk that you referred to, I think, is reflected in the discount that is applied to the sector by the stock market. And it's something we have to live with. So we had the G word. Then after the G word, by the way, we got the R word. You've gone through Lehman. You're going to get killed. And 2009 was a bad year. But 2010, we recovered sharply. 2011 for us was a record year. 12 was a record year. 13 was a record year. 14 was a record year. And 15 might be if we do all the things that we want to do for this year. So it hasn't been as bad in a tough world as people thought it was going to be. Now, by the way, that does not mean that you're not going to walk into a brick wall tomorrow morning. That can happen. So you still have to be paranoid. Andy Grove was dead right.
Only the paranoid survive.
Only the paranoid survive. And the only other thing I would make this is that I'm passionate about this because we started the business 30 years ago with 2 people in one room. And that is the difference between us and the competition. Interestingly, the only competitor that I think is like us temperamentally is Bolloré and Havas and Vivendi. The other competitors are what I would call management-led. That's not a derogatory phrase. But our company is certainly, it's in its first generation, and it is more entrepreneurial and more...
risk-taking.
I think so.
Making bets on the future.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the word bet always makes me... I use it as well, and I think some people ding me for it. So
Just
for the
to make a distinction in your favor, the investments by the group you say is more like you are more personal in nature. The investments in new media by the group you said is more temperamentally like you are personal investments.
Yeah.
Like the latest investment, that is a personal investment.
Yeah.
It's not a group investment.
Well,
I'm
not making it personally, but it is. We're sort of making those decisions. The interesting thing about Bolloré, just for a minute, is that, and this never gets commented on, particularly in France. So, saying it in India, maybe people will comment on it. Is interestingly, for the first time, you have a model with Bolloré. So you have Bolloré Investissement, which is the listed family company. That owns 63% of Havas, which is an advertising and media group. That owns, I'm trying to remember the holding in Vivendi. I think it's 15% or 20% of Vivendi. Which in turn owns now 20% of Telecom Italia. What you have, and inside Vivendi is Canal Plus and Universal Music. So for the first time, something that we couldn't do in the UK and we couldn't do in the US because of antitrust and competitive issues, you have a media owner and an agency in the same group. Very different model. And a mixture, it's interesting, hasn't caused any ripples yet, but my prediction is, maybe wrong, is it will cause ripples, because there is a clear conflict of interest there. Clear conflict of interest. So you have a media owner and an agency in the same group. They're not owned by the same vehicle, but they're controlled by the same vehicle. So really interesting. But I would say that's the only group which sort of philosophically is similar.
So you could go on asking questions, but we're running out of time, so I'll ask the last question. I'm not going to take more questions. Because this session is about how technology impacts marketing and the market. You know, recently there's a cover story in the Bloomberg Business Week about advertising technology being misused and how agencies have been misusing advertising technology to boost viewership and, you know. So is technology being abused? And how do you see that? Is technology a bad master?
No, listen, there is a discussion, put it mildly, about transparency in our industry. You know, has what we call the tsunami of media reviews been driven by lack of transparency? I don't think so. The tsunami has been driven by the fact that media investment, so clients often say to me, not often, occasionally say to me, you're our biggest supplier. I don't like the word supplier. I would rather partner or junior partner, but they don't, sometimes it's partner, but most times it's supplier or vendor. And I say, I wish that was the case, because they're including the media cost, which is money that flows through, that's 76 billion, sure, whereas the real stuff is the 19 billion of revenue. And what this means is when we think about our business, is that we have to focus on delivering value to clients in reducing that cost, because the cost pressure means that they want effectiveness, better work, and efficiency. So the review mania, tsunami, is being driven primarily by that. It's also being driven by a lack of understanding, or that's unfair, a concern that the fragmentation of new media and the growth of new media is calling into question. It's like that graph I put it up, the value of traditional. I think we're seeing a rebalancing now, right, but they don't know how much they should spend. So it's the holy grail. How much should I spend and where should I spend it? The old optimization issue. Then there is the transparency thing. And you know, we have been totally transparent. I'm asking the industry, and they're not going to do it if I ask, but billings figures, revenue figures, net sales figures, more margin analysis. We put in all our incentives. We declare it all. And by the way, the transparency thing is
why
really
do you ask that? I mean, of course,
well, because I think there should be transparency about it. For example, one of our competitors, doesn't matter who it is, has a massive barter business in the US, massive. You know, billions of dollars of revenue, probably as much as 2 billion, which is big, which is undisclosed. That's a black box. People
and
say on
conflict of
transparency,
interest,
which is very important in relation to your Bloomberg piece, so we, for the first time, are buying inventory as principal online through Xaxis. We disclosed that. Omnicom did not disclose it until they were taken to task on a quarterly earnings call when Randy Weisenberger was still there before he left, where they were forced to disclose, under some pressure from analysts, if you listen to the transcript, whether they were a principal or not. And an analect does act as a principal. We've said that from the very beginning, that we will not disclose the buy price. The client knows what the price is they pay. They are totally at liberty to compare that to the price that they will have to pay elsewhere, or they can get it audited against elsewhere. They can see it. Now, the problem on transparency, not to overburden it, and this is really an important point, I don't mind the transparency as long as it's applied equally. Now, it means competitively, right? So people should give out the same data. And it also means that Facebook and Google should be transparent. Our clients should go, procurement departments, should go to Facebook and Google and ask how the algorithms work. I doubt whether they're going to be told the answer. And by the way, they should reveal their margins too. You know, people look at our margins, we're transparent about it. We should know what the margins on search are, what the margins on video are. I mean, it should be fair for all sides.
So thank you, Sir Martin. I could go on chatting with you. It's fascinating. I learned a lot. I hope all of us in the room learned a lot. So please give a big round of ovation to Sir Martin Sorrell.